When watching Blender tutorials on YouTube, the most you'll learn about object data is that you can press Alt instead of Shift-D to make what's known as a link duplicate. But seemingly nobody either knows or bothers to explain what this actually means and how it works under the surface and what it's good for. I've decided to take the time to explain this in detail because as something that took me a long time to start making sense, it's been surprisingly useful to know in my day-to-day 3D modeling tasks. I will first explain the basics and then go over useful applications. Objects in Blender are containers. At its simplest, objects refer to an instance of mesh data, some transformations to place it in the scene, and modifiers to act on it. In a fresh instance of Blender, the inspector shows that our view layer has the object cube, indicated by the solid triangle, and that cube refers to the object data cube, indicated by the mesh triangle, and that mesh data can contain a material. If I add a modifier, it will be listed along with the data as being referred to by the object along with the data. Blender Preferences has a number of options related to objects and data. By default, materials are contained in the object data, but this can be changed so that each object has its own set of materials. If I now create a new cube, a new container object, cube 001, and mesh data cube 002 is created, but a new material will appear under the object, not the mesh data. If I were to disable mesh data duplication, the standard duplicate function would always use the old mesh data, like link duplicate, and I would have to manually create and link a new set of data to each object. This can be useful for keeping large scenes clean and organized. Objects can be changed to point to any data, so if I either make a link with Ctrl-L from a sphere to a cube, or change a sphere from the object data properties, the sphere will turn into a cube because it's linked to the data of the cube, and the number 2 indicates that this data has 2 users. This is effectively the same as making a link duplicate. The data of the object now exists in the scene as orphan data, that is data without any users, and will be permanently lost if we save and load or revert the file. This can be prevented with a fake user, which is created by using the shield icon or in the context menu of the inspector. In the object data properties list, orphan data is indicated by a 0 and fake users with an F. Objects contain a lot more than just mesh and material like particles, modifiers, and armatures, but these are the basics. You can inspect all the data and their hierarchy by exploring the different modes of the inspector. So what is all this good for? Well, you might have run into a situation where you make some link duplicates, modify some of the modifiers, and you'd like to apply the modifier, but it says modifiers cannot be applied to multi-user data. This is mostly a safety measure, as applying modifiers to data that other objects use in a different way can be disastrous. But if you know how data works, this is trivial to circumvent by making the data that you want to modify single user, applying the modifier, then selecting the rest of your object with select linked object data Shift-L, selecting the new object, and linking the object data with Ctrl-L. Another good use of changing object data manually is when working with modular sets. Say you have a room made of walls, and one of the walls has a panel on it. The common way of making one of the other walls a paneled one is by making a new link duplicate, transforming it into place, but this takes time and you've lost your modifiers on the original wall if you had any. The better way of making the change is by simply pointing the object to the correct mesh data. This is by far not a comprehensive overview of the entire data structure of Blender, but the basics that I haven't seen explained before in a digestible format. If I missed anything important, feel free to point it out to me by either tweeting at Flotar or visiting one of my daily streams on Twitch.